take a flight over Florida, and you'll see something remarkable. Thousands of blue dots scattered across the landscape, like someone spilled a giant bucket of sapphires. Florida has over 7,500 lakes. That rivals Minnesota, the state officially known as the land of 10,000 lakes. But while Minnesota's lakes were carved by massive glaciers, Florida's formed through completely different processes, ones that continue to reshape the state today. As one Florida resident put it, dig a 10 by 10 hole and you have a lake, and waterfront property, and mosquitoes, and gators, and sinkholes, and Florida man, and Category 5 hurricanes. These aren't stable, permanent features either. In Florida, the ground can literally disappear overnight. Just ask the residents who've watched sinkholes swallow cars, homes, and entire sections of neighborhood without warning. These aren't freak accidents. They're a window into the strange geology that makes Florida, Florida. Florida is melting from beneath your feet. The entire state sits on a massive platform of limestone, not ordinary rock, but a geological sponge made from the compressed remains of ancient sea creatures. When slightly acidic rainwater seeps into this limestone, a bizarre chemical reaction happens. The rock literally dissolves like an Alka-Seltzer tablet, creating underground caves and caverns that grow larger over time. Eventually, these hidden chambers become so big that the ground above can't support itself. When it finally collapses, boom, you get a sinkhole. When these sinkholes hit Florida's unusually high water table, they fill with water and become lakes. Instant waterfront property that Florida developers can charge premium prices for. As one commenter joked, let's not forget about the sinkholes. Look at the chain of lakes near Winter Haven. What seems like a connected system actually began as separate sinkholes that, over time, merged into larger water bodies. This pattern repeats throughout central Florida, creating lake clusters in areas where the limestone dissolution has been most aggressive. Most places have groundwater deep below the surface. Florida, it's practically sitting in a bathtub. The state's water table often hovers just a few feet beneath the ground. This happens because Florida is a flat peninsula surrounded by ocean, creating constant pressure on the groundwater system with nowhere for the water to drain. Dammed near the entire state is barely above sea level, as one Florida resident explained. The highest point in the entire state is only 345 feet above sea level. If you're standing on the roof of Miami's Panorama Tower, you're more than twice as high as the highest natural point in Florida. This means even tiny depressions in Florida's landscape can fill with water. While other states need deep valleys to form lakes, Florida creates them with the slightest dip in terrain. That's why you'll never see basements in Florida homes. Dig down a few feet and you're swimming. This high water table isn't static either. During Florida's intense rainy season, the water table surges upward, expanding lakes dramatically. During dry periods, some smaller lakes shrink significantly or temporarily vanish. The result? A hydrological system in constant flux, where what looks like a permanent feature on Monday might be dramatically different by Friday. Florida doesn't just get rain, it gets drenched. The state receives between 50 to 60 inches of rainfall annually, nearly double the national average of 30 inches. This deluge keeps those thousands of lakes filled to the brim. But it's not just how much rain falls, it's how it falls. From May through October, Florida experiences a remarkable wet season where afternoon thunderstorms develop with clock-like precision. These aren't gentle showers, they're intense downpours that can dump several inches of rain in an hour before the sun returns. The pattern is almost mechanical in central and southern Florida. Clear morning skies transform into towering thunderheads by afternoon. The skies open up with torrential rain, then clear again by evening. Add in the occasional hurricane or tropical storm that can dump 20+ inches of rain in a single pass, and you have a hydrological system on steroids. Climate scientists predict these patterns will become even more extreme, more intense storms alongside longer dry periods. This could trigger more dramatic lake-level fluctuations and potentially create entirely new sinkholes as water tables rise and fall more violently. Not all of Florida's lakes emerged from natural processes. Thousands were deliberately created by humans with excavators and bulldozers. When they're building new subdivisions, it is required for retention ponds to be dug out to prevent flooding, explains a Florida resident. These man-made lakes are everywhere in residential areas. As one Floridian put it, they don't call them wetlands for nothing. The real question isn't why Florida has so many lakes. It's why there's so much land in what used to be swamp. Real estate developers quickly realized waterfront property sells at premium prices, so they created their own waterfronts, digging artificial lakes that serve multiple purposes: beautiful views, flood control, and fill material to elevate buildings above flood-prone areas. They dig them to build up the adjacent land, explained another Florida native. A lot of areas in Florida are prone to flooding, so FEMA has regulations that require a certain elevation, and the lakes they dig provide fill material for construction foundation. You can spot these fake lakes by their unnaturally perfect shapes. While natural lakes have irregular shorelines and varying depths, artificial lakes feature geometric shapes with consistent depths throughout. Some of these projects are massive. When constructing Walt Disney World, engineers created the Seven Seas Lagoon by excavating millions of cubic yards of earth, which they then used to raise the Magic Kingdom's elevation. As one commenter joked, "Listen, lad, I built this kingdom up from nothing. When I started here, all there was swamp." Other kings said I was daft to build a castle on a swamp, but I built it all the same, just to show them. Florida's lakes aren't just water-filled holes. They're complex ecosystems teeming with life. Lake Okeechobee, Florida's inland sea, spans a massive 730 square miles. This aquatic giant supports thriving communities of alligators, over 40 fish species, and extensive wading bird colonies. It's essentially the heart of South Florida's water system. Even tiny retention ponds host surprising biodiversity. Florida's position between temperate and subtropical zones creates unique conditions where both northern and tropical species thrive. These lakes serve as critical rest stops for migratory birds along the Atlantic Flyway. Birds traveling between northern breeding grounds and Caribbean wintering habitats depend on these water bodies for food and shelter. But these ecosystems face serious threats. Agricultural runoff triggers toxic algal blooms. Invasive species disrupt natural food webs. Urban development encroaches on shorelines, degrading habitats and altering water flow patterns. Conservation efforts are underway, including water quality monitoring, habitat restoration projects, and invasive species management programs. These initiatives aim to preserve Florida's aquatic ecosystems while accommodating the state's exploding population. The forces creating Florida's lakes aren't slowing down, they're accelerating. The development that has been going on in Florida is a genuine heartbreak and an utter disaster environmentally, confessed one longtime Florida resident. The amount of people that live in this state does not make sense. Climate models predict Florida will experience more extreme rainfall patterns, potentially accelerating sinkhole formation as fluctuating water tables create more instability in the limestone substrate. Areas once considered geologically stable may suddenly develop new sinkholes, creating additional lakes but also threatening infrastructure. Sea level rise presents another challenge, particularly for coastal lakes. As ocean levels climb, saltwater intrudes into freshwater systems. This is already happening in some areas, where freshwater lakes are gradually becoming brackish. These chemical changes fundamentally alter ecosystems and threaten water supplies. Underground, limestone continues dissolving regardless of human intervention. As cavities expand, the potential for sudden collapses increases, especially in areas with extensive subsurface erosion. Geologists monitor these processes using sophisticated technology, but predicting exactly where and when collapses will occur remains nearly impossible. Florida's booming development compounds these challenges. One resident described how their grandparents' neighborhood went from undeveloped land with natural water runoff to an 8-lane road with massive development. Every summer, they flood, and every hurricane, they have weeks of flooding with no area for the water to move to. It's almost come full circle. Southern Florida is basically a drained swamp, where all the drained water is diverted away from Miami, noted another commenter. The land will eventually reclaim these homes. Florida is built on short-sighted greed. Water management authorities face the daunting task of balancing development needs with geological realities. Improved building codes, sophisticated stormwater systems, and enhanced monitoring networks represent crucial adaptation strategies as Florida navigates its unique challenges. Florida's 7,500 lakes reveal a state in constant transformation. One commenter summed it up perfectly. Florida is a massive swamp with piles of dirt to put houses on. The combination of dissolving limestone, high water table, and torrential rainfall creates perfect conditions for lake formation on a scale few other regions can match. As one resident put it, "You gotta put the swamp somewhere." These lakes aren't static features, they're snapshots of ongoing geological processes. Some formed thousands of years ago, while others emerged just decades or even years ago through sudden collapses or intentional construction. Florida natives see the landscape with clear eyes. It's wetlands. You don't have to dig far before there's water. The bizarre reality is that Florida might be better understood not as land with many lakes, but as water with occasional spots of dry land. This understanding matters for both environmental management and developmental planning. As Florida continues its explosive growth, balancing human needs with geological realities becomes increasingly crucial. The lakes defining Florida's landscape serve as reminders of the state's geological uniqueness, a constantly evolving system rather than stable ground. One resident lamented, "These people keep moving here. Developers keep developing, and all of them don't know jack shit about the environment they are living in or curtailing or developing." By understanding these dynamics, we gain insight into both Florida's natural history and the challenges it faces in coming decades. These water features aren't just recreational assets, but windows into the complex dance between geology, water, ecology, and human activity that continues to reshape the Sunshine State.